Hi, and welcome to ScreenPlay, where we discuss elements of pop culture for the community. I'm your host, Noah Bailey. Today we will be joined by our cultural editor, Kristen Henningsen, who will be sharing her review of the One Direction album Made in the AM, which dropped just days ago. Then we'll be joined by Aurora alumni and co-creator of ScreenPlay, Jason Rugg, who will be talking about the release of the highly anticipated Star Wars game, Battlefront. But before we start our interviews, let's watch an edited piece by one of the writers, Anthony Pauls, with 3 video games to look out for in 2016.
"2015 was a pretty good year for video games, with such games as Batman Arkham Knight, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and Fallout 4 gracing our consoles. And while there are still a few games left in 2015, such as Rainbow Six Siege and Just Cause 3, it's probably a good time to look into next year to see what games are coming out then. So here are several games that you should definitely keep an eye out for in 2016. The first game on this list is Far Cry Primal, the latest entry in the Far Cry franchise. Unlike the previous games, 3 and 4, which take place in modern day, Primal goes in the opposite direction, taking players back to prehistoric times and the days of the caveman. If the trailer is any indication, players will be fighting against such threats as woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and other tribes in order to survive and thrive. And while there hasn't been much released in terms of gameplay and story beyond the trailer, the setting alone and how it will work within the Far Cry formula makes this one of the more interesting games when it comes out. If you're looking for a more strategic experience, then XCOM 2 has got you covered. The game takes place 20 years after the events of Enemy Unknown, in a future where humanity has lost its war against the aliens. XCOM is still fighting them, but have resorted to guerrilla warfare due to all the countries surrendering and no longer funding XCOM. While the gameplay is still the same, new units such as the Ranger and the Specialist for the humans, and the Viper and Berserker for the aliens help make this game a little more interesting. You can start the fight to save humanity on February 8th. Bosses aren't too common in today's games, but the final entry on this list, Cuphead, plans to change all that. After losing a round of gambling with the devil, the title character goes on a quest to save himself by bringing down a total of 30 bosses, ranging from a pirate, to a giant carrot, to a dragon, all by shooting him with a lot of bullets from his finger gun. The game promises a progression system and can be played in single player or in co-op, with player 2 controlling Cuphead's friend Mugman. While there is no set release date at the time of this video, Cuphead looks to be the most unique game of 2016. If you had to keep an eye on only one game, this is the game you should keep an eye on.
And we're back with Kristen and her review of 1D's Made in the AM. How's it going, Kristen?
It's going pretty well. How's it going with you?
Doing fine, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you reviewed One Direction's new album that just released, Made in the AM.
Yes, I did.
Tell me about it.
It's fantastic. It's their first CD without Zayn, because he left back in March. Don't clap. It was very sad. And so I was concerned that parts of it would be missing, especially because he usually carried like the high notes at the end. He did a good job of that. And he's not there anymore, so I was concerned. But the other band members picked it up really well, and it seemed like this album sounds much more cohesive than the last ones have. So it's a very good job.
So they didn't just hire a woman to like hit the notes instead?
They did not.
Okay, well,
maybe next time.
Maybe next time. I'm glad to hear that it was still a cohesive album. Do you know how many tracks are on the album?
There are 13 on the regular version, but then if you get the deluxe version, you get 4 extra tracks.
Oh, wow. I see.
So, and one of my favorite ones comes on the extra track, so I'm really happy I got the deluxe version.
What track is that?
Wolves. It just sounds like catchy and happy.
How is this? Wolves?
Like wolves.
Oh,
like
wolves.
the animals.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
like
see.
Wolves.
Now, how does this like vibe or genre of this album relate or not relate to their previous albums?
The last 2 at least had a lot more of like the 80s rock in it. And this one is still sort of like 80s rock, but also 80s pop to it to a certain degree.
Okay.
Like there's one song, I don't know if that's technically 80s, but there's one song that has very much so like a Fleetwood Mac sound to it.
Okay.
And there's one that has, it sounds apparently very much so like Paul Simon Graceland album. The entire album in one song.
The entire album in one song.
And so.
Because they're just that talented, obviously.
Yeah. And so it's like a lot of different styles of songs, but somehow it all comes together very well. So it's less so like the 80s rock version, but still 80s.
I see.
And pop and good. Modern times.
Okay. So they are going on a hiatus in March 2016, correct?
Rumor has it was bumped up to January, so I don't know.
So will they be touring until January?
No, their tour actually ended back on Halloween, and so now they're just doing a lot of press for Made in the AM.
Okay.
And then apparently, rumor has it now January 1st, they start their hiatus,
So now they don't have, like they aren't doing a tour for this album, they're just releasing this.
So that just means that their next tour that comes out, you get more songs.
I see. Yeah. Fascinating. All right, well, now on for our second edited piece, and this being a new segment that we will have from time to time called Kristins' Comic Corner, where he shares 10 facts that you should know about Ant-Man.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first edition of Comic Corner, the show where I, AU's resident comic savant, Christian Hubbard, break down any and all things superhero. Now this week, I got a chance to sit down and read 2015's Ant-Man, which features Scott Lang's ongoing struggle to find a job after going through hell and back, literally, as Ant-Man 2.0. Well, 3.0. Actually, wait, 4.0. Actually, I don't know. Now, Scott Lang begins this issue in full Ant-Man costume at a freaking job interview. Turns out he's applying to be Stark Tower's new head of security. He doesn't get the job because obviously Tony Stark doesn't do too well with poor people. He then goes and has some daddy-daughter field time with his daughter Cassie. He returns to Stark Tower in order to hack Jarvis and pass the test that Stark had assigned to him. He gets caught. He gets the job, but then he suddenly moves to Miami because his daughter is abruptly uprooted by his crazy ex-wife Peggy. You got all that? Good. Now, first of all, I read this story on Marvel Unlimited, which is an amazing app that offers over 17,000 issues of Marvel Comics for just $10 a month. It's highly recommended. Now, this story ultimately left me rooting for Scott Lang. He's a convicted felon who's newly released and is suddenly just given the opportunity to shrink in size and increase in strength, given the chance to be a hero, and he wants nothing more but to prove himself worthy of being a good father to his daughter Cassie. And obviously Hank Pym did see some good in him when he just handed over the most technologically advanced suit in the history of Marvel Comics. Overall, this issue gets an 8 out of 10 for forcing me to look onward to the upcoming issues and forcing me to want to know what's going on in Scott Lang's life after this. But it only gets an 8 because the bad boy persona that Tony Stark tried to convey in this issue, it left a bad taste in my mouth. Hey guys, thanks a lot for joining me on this week's first edition of Comic Corner. My name is Christian Hubbard, and if you guys want, go ahead and give us a follow over at AU Spartan Media, and until next time, live long and prosper.
Now, for our second guest, AU alumni and co-creator of ScreenPlay, also former director of ScreenPlay, Jason Rugg, who's going to chat with us about the highly anticipated Star Wars Battlefront video game that was just released yesterday, right?
Yeah, at midnight.
At midnight?
So, yeah.
Tell me about this beautiful, beautiful game, Jason.
Well, I have to say it is probably the most fun I've had in a video game in a long time. I'm not really a video game guy anymore. I used to be a video game guy back, like, I guess 10 years ago. So it was really cool to get back into it with Star Wars Battlefront because, like, the Star Wars Battlefront franchise was my childhood going up to this. And you played it as well.
I did, and they celebrated their 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
Just like a couple weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So what is the premise of this game? Does it have a premise? Is there, what's the gameplay like?
Well, it's based in the Star Wars universe. Kind of, you can get that from the title.
Yes.
Star Wars.
Now, is this the current saga? Is this the original trilogy?
The original trilogy.
Clone Wars?
Only.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they're thinking about. There's rumors that they might add in Clone Wars after a little while. But the cool thing about this is it's actually going to pair up with the movie, and they're going to release new maps and things that actually go along with the movies as they release them over the next couple of years. So I think that's really cool.
Definitely. Now, what are some of the major differences from the original Battlefront video games as opposed to this one?
Well, this was made by an entirely new developer. So this was made by EA rather than Pandemic, who made the original two. And I really liked Pandemic. They made a lot of my favorite games back in the day. So now to see a new game that kind of took their own spin on it is really cool. I have to say, vehicle gameplay is just a mess, though. Like, flying is really difficult. Just crashing the ground a lot. So
I can imagine it would probably be hard to drive, an X-Wing or things like that. So, what is the gameplay actually like? Like, what do you do? Are there missions? Is there conquest? Is there capture the flag like the old one?
So they actually don't have a campaign in this one. So there's no like story or anything like that. You can play single player missions, which we both played some of those. That was a good amount of fun.
Yes.
And they're online. There's some like capture the flag. They call it cargo. So you have to go and get as much cargo from the enemy as you can, sort of thing. And it's a lot of running and shooting. It's kind of like Call of Duty, but just skinned to be Star Wars, I guess. But not exactly, because they're trying to get away from that as far as possible.
Yeah, it does seem very different than Call of Duty, which is nice because it's not just a knockoff, but with Star Wars characters.
Yeah.
All right, well, now it's time to move on to screen time. In this segment, pop culture topics will be chosen from our pool of submissions, and we'll have a short amount of time to talk about them, 60 seconds to be exact. When the time is up, the topic gets thrown out, and we move on to the next chosen submission. All right, let's begin. Are you guys ready to talk about... Yeah... iCarly reunion.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear about that?
Yes. It's weird, though, because Freddie got married.
It's a beautiful thing, the iCarly reunion. Yeah.
I mean, it's nice that there was a reason for them to get together, but he's like a year or two older. And
Then, like,
he's
us,
getting married, and it's weird.
It is very weird.
You're too young, Freddie Benson.
Yes. What is your mom going to think? Like, she's going
know.
to
She's gonna
have...
move out, or what?
Exactly. Like, she'll have to move into the apartment with them.
Yeah. I thought Freddie was going to marry Sam, so...
In real life.
In real life, Freddie and Sam did not get married. He didn't get married to Carly.
Now, see, this was actually the turning point of our whole friendship. Was we realized she was team
Seti.
and I.
Freddie.
Yeah, Creddy.
Okay, so you're Creddy.
Yeah.
And you're Seti.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Where do you
Why?
fall?
Where do I fall?
Yeah.
I am Team Gibby. No, I'm I don't know.
Gibby always wins.
I don't know. That's a great question.
We'll have to answer it next time.
I guess so. On our next screenplay episode, which will be iCarly themed. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, we are going to talk about... Not that. Charlie Sheen has AIDS. How do you guys feel about that?
I don't. It's not good. You don't want anyone to have AIDS.
Yeah,
so
you
like,
have to feel bad when
feel
anyone
bad
gets
for
AIDS.
Charlie
I mean,
But
please continue about Charlie.
didn't they say that like he knew that he had it and
For
he
like
didn't
4
tell
years?
anyone, so now he could be
Yeah.
going to jail.
Which I actually didn't know that was a thing, that somebody could go to jail from that. But I suppose it does make sense. I found out that one of his partners, Denise Richards, the woman he was married to for a long time and had kids with, she's from Downers Grove, Illinois.
wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
I hope she doesn't
It is
have AIDS.
interesting. I hope she doesn't have AIDS either,
I
you
hope
know?
no one has
But
AIDS.
yes,
One up
it's
in
a
it.
terrible thing, really.
Yeah.
The fact that, like, he also says that he, like, is fine, like,
Didn't
it
he
went
say it's
away.
like out of his system now?
Yes, which
I don't
I'm
think
not
that's how it
sure.
works.
Like, oh, it's been 2 to 4 days. It's flushed out of my system. Like, that just doesn't work
So if
anymore.
he goes to prison for that, like, what's the charge? They aid and abet? Or?
Who knows? Who knows? So that concludes this episode of Screenplay. Join us next time for more talk about pop culture and things going on in the community. If you would like to show your love for Screenplay or have suggestions for us or would like to be on the show, find us on Twitter at Spartan Media or tweet us using the hashtag #AUScreenplay. And a big thanks to Kristen and Jason for being on the show today. I'm your host, Noah Bailey. Until next time. Yes.